Hi, I'm Dan from GigaBoots. Sony just announced that PlayStation VR is coming out October 2016 for $399 US. With this final piece of the puzzle, we can now have a definitive discussion on the various positions of the VR headsets. Today on the Rant is Go, I'm going to explain to you why PlayStation VR is not only drastically cheaper than the competition, but why it's downright better. Let's cover the obvious stuff first, the price difference. The PS4 is currently $350. By the end of this year, it could possibly be cheaper. That plus the cost of the VR headset is going to be $750. A lot of the games are designed for DualShock 4 controllers, so PlayStation Move controllers aren't necessary per se, but if you were to pick some up, you'd probably buy the bundle for the PlayStation VR headset that includes the camera and the Move controller with it. This total cost won't likely exceed $850. Conversely, about 1% of people on Steam have a VR-capable PC. That means anyone who's considering VR is almost definitely going to build a new computer. The Oculus Rift and Vive both require PCs that cost a little over $1,000 to build yourself if you exclude the monitor and the speakers, but if you buy the PC pre-assembled, then the price will be higher. That makes the final cost of getting those headsets $1,650 to $1,850, depending on whether you get the Oculus Rift or the Vive. The cost of getting a PS4 and all the parts necessary comes out for about half the price, and that's a huge difference. What most people don't realize about the PlayStation VR headset is that it's actually superior to the quality of the Oculus Rift and HTC Vive. The reason why is actually a rather complicated thing to explain. Let me get the more obvious reason out of the way first. The display is capable of running at a higher frame rate for more immersive and impressive VR. The PlayStation VR headset runs at a maximum of 120 frames per second, whereas the Vive and Oculus Rift run at 90 frames per second. That's easy to understand, right? Good. Now it's time to jump into the deep end of the pool. If you look at the resolutions of the headsets, you'll notice that both the Vive and Oculus Rift boast a moderately higher resolution than the PlayStation VR does. The story doesn't end at comparing these numbers though, as not all displays are made equally. You might have noticed how Sony says that their headset's resolution is 1920 by RGB by 1080. The reason for this is that unlike the two other headsets, PlayStation VR has what's called an RGB subpixel array. That means every pixel has one red, one green, and one blue subpixel element to them. This is the normal way an LCD is constructed, but sometimes OLED screens are constructed a cheaper way with what's called a pentile layout. This image is an example of the difference between the two. Every pixel on an RGB array has access to all the colors necessary to construct sharp colors and images. Pentile, on the other hand, has two greens for every one red and blue element, thus inflating the resolution on paper. In fact, the effective resolution of pentile displays can actually be somewhere around 66% of their listed resolution, which brings the resolution of those headsets lower than the 1080p of the PlayStation VR. Though the difference between pentile and RGB arrays is arguably not noticeable on phones, which is wrong, it's noticeable. I notice it, therefore it's noticeable. In a VR headset, the screen is right up against your eyes, with optics stretching the image to cover all of your peripheral view. The problem is magnified by the proximity to your eyes, and worsened further by the field of view, which, on the Vive and Oculus, it's 10 degrees wider than the PlayStation VR headset. All of this is why some people think the screen door effect on the Oculus Rift and Vive is worse than it is on PlayStation VR. Sony argues that their optics technology helps, but after everything I just mentioned, it almost doesn't matter. Speaking of how it doesn't even matter, none of that superiority actually matters. Why? Because the mainstream appeal of PlayStation VR is in a whole different league from Oculus. At the end of this year, you'll be able to walk into a store like Walmart or Best Buy and buy a PlayStation VR headset. The Rift and Vive don't get that ease and marketability the PlayStation VR has because they have a laundry list of requirements for your PC, and their price points are PlayStation 3 launch price high. Can you imagine some schmuck who works at retail explaining to someone what's needed to use a Rift or Vive? I can't. I can, however, imagine them going, "Oh yeah, that VR headset works with the PlayStation 4. You just need that camera over there." That's simple. And that simplicity in their price point is why they're going to win this war. At least they're going to do it and not have a totally shit product. Thanks for watching this episode of The Rant is Go. If you have any questions or comments, leave them here in the comment section below or tweet at me. I'm at GigaBoots on Twitter. Join me next time on The Rant is Go when I talk about how Summer Lesson is going to be the real killer app that VR needs.
Sensei.
Shout out to GigaBoots executive producers Gary Owen and Cywolf, who produce GigaBoots via Patreon just like you can. If you like this episode of The Rant Is Go, then you should check out this one I did on why inept gaming journalism pisses me off, and this other one about why you shouldn't buy a GPU anytime soon.
GigaBoots has been brought to you by our glorious producers, Cywolf and Gary Owen, via our Patreon. Consider becoming a GigaBoots patron today.